building a new piece of technology, I think it can look, particularly from the outside, like first thing you do, you pick your tech, then you do some iterative development. You don't build it all in one chunk because you might get it wrong. You do a little bit at a time. And then ta-da, you've got a product.
Yeah.
But surely if you're doing that, how does it get so messy?
Well, I think it comes back to the fact that even though we're talking about technology and that is binary, we are working with humans. And that is the fundamental core to leading in technology and with technology. And I don't think AI actually changes that. I think AI is a very interesting topic, but I still think that the way that humans deliver technology and how you lead that is the key to successful delivery in technology. It's the human beings that then are doing the work to enable you to get from the fanfare to the conclusion that is where most of that messy middle happens.
And of course, we learned about Project Mess back in the 70s, and there's been so much thinking and so much development since then. Why are we not able to just follow the process and it all just works?
Because there's so many different processes and technology is very complex. There's also the fact that technology sits within its ecosystem, which makes it even more complicated. But processes in itself, there are so many different schools of thought when it comes to process. I mean, you've got ITIL, you've got Lean, you've got Six Sigma, you've got Agile, which, maybe you'll debate with me whether that actually is a process. But I think it's that difference, those different processes that you can or can't take mean that you're constantly making a decision as a leader as to the right and the most appropriate process perhaps that you could be using, and also then the amount of process that you put into a delivery. So too much process, you will slow things down. Too little process, you create chaos. And in a regulated industry, process is very important. We have particular governance frameworks and compliance requirements that we absolutely need to make sure we adhere to. And I'm all in favor of things like building capability into systems that make delivery for engineers quicker. So, building your SDLC into the configuration of your system, that kind of thing is very good. Perhaps not while you're delivering the key deliverable that you're trying to get done, but that's good architecture to build into the system that will just enable your pipelines to move quicker.
I find this topic so fascinating because the things that are now adding complexity are all tools that we humans have built to simplify and help the process. Are there principles we can use, or are we always on our own and always kind of fighting in these weeds of saying, what do I use now? It could be anything.
It is a really good question. And it's something that I think about all the time, because I think it's the just enough. It's that Goldilocks. It's the three bears and the porridge being just right for me. And that's so difficult because naturally, I think as humans, we want to control things. And when we're delivering something, we're delivering that piece of value, the people who we're delivering that for, whether the stakeholders in the business and even the teams working on it, want to know when it's going to be done. Like, how can we make this as predictable as possible?
Right.
But technology isn't predictable most of the time, in my experience.
It's not completely predictable, right?
It's not an easy answer. I couldn't sit here and put my hand on my heart and go, yes, so I've got this sorted. I absolutely know that if you apply Bob principle XYZ to this, it will just completely revolutionize the way that you deliver. I think this is a question that we as tech leaders need to be asking, need to be reviewing. I think this is where we should be looking at the wider industry. What are other people doing? What are the kind of schools of thought here? And then being tenacious when we are applying a process to think about things like, what metrics do we need to track and what's the impact of tracking that metric? And then thinking about what's the minimum amount of process that we need to put in place to track perhaps this particular metric. I think that's where I would be looking, and then reviewing it as you go, because process is quite sneaky. I find that it kind of, like, people are well intentioned. I don't believe people generally arrive at work to do a bad job. They want to do well and they want to make things better, but they
Mm-hmm.
might put in a process, a sneaky little process that suddenly becomes this massive thing. And then you're sitting there going, how did we create this? And
Mm-hmm.
this is not giving us the results that we want. And we have created this mess.
Yes, exactly. And then it's also this challenge of this balance between trying something for long enough and in enough different situations that you really have understood what it can and can't do. But at the same time, not hampering yourself with a process that isn't serving you.
Yeah, I completely agree. I also think there's a place here for leadership communities. So we've all obviously got IP and information that is specific to our companies that we could never disclose. However, the conversation that I think is really valuable and we should be having across the industry is, what processes are you using? How are you getting from A to B? What's working for you? What isn't working for you? I think it's really important to still make sure that you're challenging yourself to try new processes, but also going and speaking to people in different industries, understanding what they're doing and learning from them, and then bringing nuggets of that into what you're doing.